Hi, I'm Pam, and I'm here to talk about retro video games. Today I'm tackling a game from one of the most well-known and well-loved Konami series. It's Super Castlevania IV. Super Castlevania IV was developed by Konami and released for the Super Nintendo in 1991. It's a platformer where you play the whip-wielding Simon Belmont. It's been 100 years and Dracula has revived. Again. Simon Belmont is called on to defeat him. Again. But this time, they're in 16-bit. This is the first of the earlier Castlevania games that I've played, having only played Symphony of the Night before. My first impressions? They weren't that good. I'm used to my platforming heroes feeling quite nimble and agile, while Simon Belmont kind of felt like controlling an elephant. The game features 9 regular stages, broken into levels, plus a few bonus stages and a small boss gauntlet at the end. Your whip is your main attack, and you can shoot it in 8 different directions. You can also swing the whip around after you've snapped it, but I found that particular move a bit awkward with the D-pad. There are a number of special items, most of which can be found by destroying candelabras and walls. These include weapons like the dagger, axe, and boomerang, which can be used by pressing the right bumper, and all do damage on a different trajectory. The boomerang was generally my favorite, since it could hit an enemy once on the way out and once on the way back. Having lots of charges of this made both bosses and the regular levels much easier. But the axe, which travels in an arc, was also quite useful in certain places. To use these special weapons, you need to collect hearts, which makes this one of the only games I can think of where hearts don't equal health. Instead, they give you charges for your special weapons. You can also find items to upgrade your weapons, pork chops which restore your health, and look more like turkey legs, and the occasional 1-up. The platforming starts out quite straightforward and allowed me to get used to the stiff-feeling controls fairly quickly. It also eases you into using your whip to swing across gaps in the first few levels. One thing I found awkward throughout the game was staircases. You have to press diagonally in the direction of the stairs if you want to use them, and there were many a time when I tried to jump on stairs and ended up passing right through them. Simon is also capable of moonwalking upstairs in the opposite direction of what you're pressing. For a 16-bit platformer, this is on the easy side, but that's not a complaint. In fact, though the game does lack challenge in the beginning, it does definitely get harder, and I think it has a good difficulty curve. As far as platforming goes, it gets much more difficult when you need to use your whip to traverse the levels. This happens a little in earlier stages, but really gets challenging in Stage A, the Clocktower. Something that wasn't made obvious in-game or even in the manual is that you can extend the length of your whip as you swing. I didn't know this, so there was one point in the treasury where I got stuck, thinking I was just bad at jumping for a good 10 minutes, before I looked up a playthrough which showed the whip getting longer. This was pretty frustrating. There are also some enemies which feel a little cheap. I was quite shocked the first time I was killed by a table. It's not always obvious what is a threat. Also, screw those bats. I hate those things. Each stage ends in a boss fight. These start out pretty simple. For the first handful of bosses, you can really just spam attacks, and chances are you'll kill them before they kill you. It wasn't until the dancing specters in Stage 6 that I felt the need to focus as much on avoiding damage as dealing it. The extra stage bosses are also pretty tough, and Dracula, though he has obvious patterns, is a longer, multi-phase fight. It was probably Death, the penultimate boss, who gave me the most trouble. At least until I figured out how to cheat and avoid most of his attacks. The game does feature unlimited continues as well as a password system. However, if you use these, you'll lose any items you had picked up, and you'll start at the beginning of the stage. The visual design of Super Castlevania IV is great, and there are some really outstanding levels. The backgrounds are interesting, and a lot is done to add the appearance of depth to the levels. Iron gates, which you can travel in front of or behind, and the use of things like windows give a peek into other environments. There are also often objects in the foreground. Levels are both indoor and outdoor. There are castle interiors, dungeons, graveyards, and areas near water. The treasury is a particularly nice one, with sparkling gold everywhere. My favorite stages combine cool visuals with interesting gameplay. 4-2 puts you in a room with spiked walls, and you have to grapple onto a ring with your whip as the room rotates around you. 4-3 has an amazing background rotation effect, and you have to run through the level, fighting monsters as the floor drops out behind you. Though it does suffer from some slowdown. Yet another stage has swinging chandeliers that you need to travel across. It was levels like these that really made this game for me, and provided a nice change from the more usual kinds of platforming and fighting. There are a huge variety of enemy types, and most of them look great. All the bosses look unique and have cool designs, even if the first half dozen or so don't play all that differently. I particularly like the look of Puwaxel, a giant skeleton with a huge gross tongue, the dancing specters, which would glide gracefully through the air before stabbing at you with rapiers, and Zapbat, which sparkled because it was made out of treasure and split into smaller sparkle bats as you damaged it. Another small aesthetic choice I liked was that in between stages, you get to see your progress on a map, which made it feel a bit more like taking a journey than if the next stage had just started right away. As for the music, it's hit or miss for me. The reimagining of Bloody Tears is good, and I really love Simon's theme, but nothing else really stood out for me as I played. I do like the little musical flourishes when you beat a boss or go to the overworld map though. Overall, I had a good time with Super Castlevania IV. Though the controls and Simon's movements did feel a bit stiff at first, it didn't take too long to get used to, and the relatively easy difficulty meant it wasn't too punishing. I love the game's visual design and the variety in environments, bosses, and enemies. There were a few standout levels that really made the game for me. If you haven't played this, or like me, don't have a lot of experience with the Castlevania series, I think Super Castlevania IV would be a great one to start with. If you want to see more, check out one of my other videos linked here. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I have a Patreon if you want to support my content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.